You're on the air with Florenza, your podcast destination for authentic conversations with a twist. So, grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and join me on this unique literary journey. Cheers! Lianne Dillsworth has a master's in creative writing and Victorian studies and won a place on the London Library Emerging Writers Program. She was first runner-up in the 2020 SI Leeds Literary Prize for Black and Asian women writers in the UK. Lianne lives in London, where she works on growing inclusion within her workplace. Lianne's debut novel, Theatre of Marvels, was published to high acclaim. House of Shades is her dazzling second novel. London, 1833. Doctress Hester Reeves has been offered a life-changing commission, but it comes at a price. She must leave behind her husband and their canal-side home in King's Cross and move to Tall Trees, a dark and foreboding house in Fitzrovia. If Hester can cure the ailing health of its owner, she will receive payment that will bring her everything she could dream of. But on arriving at Tall Trees, Hester quickly discovers that an even bigger task awaits her. Now she must unearth secrets that have lain hidden for decades, including one that will leave Hester's own life changed forever. Please welcome Lianne to I absolutely love this cover. It's not even one of my questions, but as I'm looking at it, did you have a lot of influence in the items that are on the cover?
A little bit. So I was really lucky with the design. I saw it, and when you see something straight away, you're like, I love this, and it really sort of captured it. And we've sort of done a little bit of backwards and forwards. So it's got lots of gold on it, as you can see, and there's some different shapes in the gold. So we had some backwards and forwards about what the best shape should be, and we ended up with the medicine bottle to represent Hester and what she does. And then the figure that you can see in the window, at the beginning, in the first sort of draft of the cover, she was outside the house, and we moved her inside. So that was, I think that was the biggest change, but otherwise it was more or less perfect when it was done.
Nice. Now, with the figure that's in the window, because that could represent so many people, even though it's looking like she's on the second floor, and based on where it looks like she's positioning, I interpreted her as being Margaret because of her being on the second floor, but also without giving away too much and the plot, it very easily could be one of three others. So is there a particular person that the figure represents, or is she just supposed to be representative of anyone?
Yeah, so I think that exactly as you say, there's one of a number of people she could be. And I think, as you say, no spoilers, but I think it works to have that quite ambiguous in a way. So people can sort of take it. And what I love actually is I think that in the UK, we always have ground floor, first floor, second floor. So I would say she's on the first floor, but I love that it's the second floor for you guys, because I think that works even better.
And that makes sense, because in Germany, I think it was the same. And so that makes sense with that. And also I see the key element that's in there with the swirls. And so that makes a lot of sense. And I just love all those hidden innuendos that you see that initially, when you first look at it, you don't see it right away. But as you're, digging into the book, it makes sense afterwards. Now, I have some very unusual questions, but before we start, I would like to toast. I would like to toast to a very successful show. So cheers to a
Nice.
great show.
Cheers, and thank you for having me on. It's lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. And ladies and gentlemen, I know that you don't see us, but I tell you, Lianne and I could pass for sisters. Like
We absolutely
legit,
could.
we could pass for sisters. So we might have to just sneak in a screenshot or something to say, look at how much they look alike. Now, I've got great questions that are designed to um, make you think about your book differently than perhaps you would think of it during another interview. And so my goal is to get some aha moments during our chat. And I want to start with this. This question just kind of jumped out at me, and it's under the title of character swap. If Hester Reeves could switch places with a character from any other book for a day, who would you choose and why?
Gosh, now that is a good question. Let me think. Hmm. There was a book that came out a while ago now, and I forget the writer, but it was called in the UK. The title was The Book of Negroes.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember that one. It won an award, and obviously the language is based on the language that's used at the time. And there was a character in that, and she was a black woman who was very much in the mold of Hester, lots of agency, a go-getter, sort of independent, and someone who was caring. And I think that sort of would work really well. I'm going to try and find out whilst we're talking
Okay.
who wrote this book, because yeah, I think that works.
Wonderful. Now, the book is set in early 1800s and it's in Victorian. The dialogue in the book is Victorian. What got you interested in that time frame? Because that's a very specific time frame and you're very young. So what set you down that path?
Well, I think I should probably admit that I look a bit younger than maybe I am. But I did a master's in Victorian studies, and the reason I did that was because I really love Victorian literature. So Dickens and Henry James and Brontes and all of that. And I really wanted to think more about the context, and my special interest is about Black British people around that time. So that's where it sort of came from, having done some studying and really loving the literature, and going from there.
Wonderful. Now, do you have family stories that tie in with Hester's story? Do you have any um, historical aspects of your own life that ties into this story?
Not particularly with this one. With my first book, which is called Theatre of Marvels, that came out in 2022. And there, some of the plot line concerns Sierra Leone in West Africa, which is where my granddad's from originally. But yeah, this one, not so much. But I do think that it's really important for us to be able to have the conversation about some of the topics that it covers. It's not something we talk about so much in the UK. So yeah, I wanted to explore some of those themes.
What has been the feedback that you've received thus far from those who have actually read the book or are hearing about the subject matter of the book, particularly what are you hearing in the UK?
Yeah, so I think that there's been, I think, a recognition that it's quite nuanced, and it's not a polemic. It's more putting together a scenario, and depending on which characters you're following, you can sort of go in different directions with it. I think that first and foremost, it's really important to me that there's a good story, that there's a plot line, and then I think the backdrop and the context, that's sort of there as a, yes, it's there by the way. And I mean, with historical fiction, I love it when you can then go and find out about how much is real and what it's based on and all of that. But first and foremost, I think people are saying, yes, I really have enjoyed this story. I've empathized with Hester, who's my lead character. And then she has opened the door to them for some to understanding or getting to know some of the more complicated history that we have here.
Your first book, Theater of Marvel,
That's right.
released to such acclaim. How difficult was it, like writing that super high as your first release? I mean, the internet is just a buzz about that book. Like, what was going on with you when you thought, okay, I really want to have a go at this with the second book? What was going on in your mind?
Yeah, well, I think that I'd written the first one in the pandemic, and obviously it was my debut, so you don't really know what to expect, and everything feels new, and you don't really know how publishing works, and so that had all been felt like a bit of a whirlwind and a bit of a rush. So when I sat down to do the second one, I was thinking, I'm not really sure how did I do this again? You know, that sort of feeling where it's just like, oh, like how did I get like what all the steps, and I'd sort of forgotten a little bit. So it took me a while to sort of get my head in the right space. And also you get so sort of caught up in sort of the reviews and going to different places to talk about it, speaking with you today, and it's really hard to sort of knuckle down and get some discipline about
Right.
you. But I had a contract which helped, and so I think it was just really going back to the things that interest me and saying what sort of story do I want to tell. I know that I always want to tell the stories of strong Black women, Black British women, and that's my sort of start point.
How difficult was that for you?
Yeah, so I think at the time there was a real sense within the UK publishing industry that we needed to tell more of these stories. And I had a really supportive editor, and I felt that I could say exactly what I need to say, and they didn't question or censor. And I think one of the things that my editor said when I was with her and she was describing the book to someone else, and she said it's quite confronting, some of the scenes and sort of themes within it. And she said that's what I liked about it. And that really pleased me because I wanted it to be challenging. And I think that I always like fiction that sort of makes me like I can go away and sort of chew on it. I want to think about it,
Right.
and look back and like, oh, okay. And I think that we were both in the same place around seeing the value in that. So yeah, so I felt very supported, and I think one of the things that was interesting was after it came out, and sometimes people would say it's not particularly graphic. I thought there would be more, it would go into more detail on some of the things that are harder to describe. But I feel like it wasn't necessary for me to to do that. And I always sort of think, how graphic does it need to be?
Right.
I think that's an ongoing sort of question. And yeah, I think it got a really good reception, which was lovely. Um, so yeah, it was just really nice to be able to put it out. And I think at the time there was other Black British authors. So Louise Hare was another one. Um, at the time, there's a few of us now, which is great.
Nice. Wonderful. If readers could smell taste, and touch the world of House of Shades, what would the signature scent, flavor, and texture associated with it be?
These are very good questions. You did say to me that they were gonna make me work. I think in terms of the smell, it would definitely be quite smoky.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time in London, it's very smoggy. The air quality wasn't great. Lots of pollution and things like that. Also, you didn't really have great drainage, so it's quite earthy, quite pungent, shall we say. So I think smell-wise, that would probably be the case. And to the extent that you could probably taste it a little bit in the atmosphere, like the smells are so strong. Um, and in terms of touch, when Hester walks up to the house that
Mm-hmm.
is the House of Shades, it's called Tall Trees in the book, she notices these spiked railings that are outside. And I think that sort of spikiness is something that she definitely associates with the house in the first instance.
If you could transport back to the Victorian era for one day, what specific event or place would you visit to experience the settings of your novel firsthand?
Oh, I think I think I would want to go a little bit further into the century, honestly, when they had the Great Exhibition, which was a moment when there was lots sort of going on with the Industrial Revolution and different processes and things like that. And House of Shades is set a little bit earlier on in the century. But at the time it's set, it's just after, just as abolition is being brought forward. So I suppose that would be quite a positive moment, and there would be a general sense of achievement and maybe an exhalation after a lot of people had fought for slavery to be abolished.
Yeah, that's great. If you could bring back one artifact from the Victorian era to the present day, what would it be and how do you think it would influence your future writing?
Do actually have. So when you get those old-fashioned letters, they often have seals on them, and you
Hmm.
can like do a little stamp. So you would have like a wax seal.
Hmm.
And there was a big letter writing culture in the Victorian period. So I think that I would, that's the artifact that I would bring. So there's some of those like original tools for letter writing. And I think it would influence my writing in that I really love epistolary novels where they'll start with a letter and
Uh-huh.
see like letters going back and forth, things like that. So that's probably what I would choose.
Nice. I like that answer. Is there a character in House of Shades whose backstory didn't make it to the final draft, but intrigues you enough to possibly consider using them in the future?
I think so. Willa has uh, quite a backstory. She is Hester's sister.
Sister.
And yeah, so a lot of the story is around, so their mother has died, and Hester, as the older sister, has been sort of given responsibility for Willa, and Willa's a little bit wayward, and
A little bit.
she she needs her, yeah, she needs some guidance, and she has some typical younger sister behaviors, but I do also really have a lot of time for her because I think she's quite young, she's grieving, she's lashing out, she's got all these feelings and she doesn't really know what to do with them. She wants to be independent, she doesn't realize how vulnerable she can be.
Hmm.
And I think that she would be a character that it would be interesting to follow and learn more about. And I think that being slightly older, having a more responsible job, I think that there's an element of Hester that is quite sort of sensible and she gets things done,
Hmm.
whereas maybe Willa has a little bit more fun, which
I
would
can
be
see
good for
that. That
sure.
would be a great future story.
And
Now,
as you saying that, I was like, I was getting into it. I was like,
I
yeah,
know,
maybe she could do
see?
this and she could do that. I'll put
Now,
you my acknowledgements.
okay, good. I want to hear about that one coming forward. In the book, there is a dinner party that's very instrumental in the plot. If you can invite any three figures from the Victorian era, primarily from House of Shades, to a current dinner party, who would they be and what would you ask them?
I think the first one would have to be Mary Seacole. So she was a woman who came to London from Jamaica and she had a big role to play in the Crimean War. She was a doctoress, that's how she styled herself. And I borrowed that occupation for Hester.
Mm-hmm.
And she had written her life story. She was really prominent and famous, like a celebrity, and really well respected at the time. So she would definitely be one of my dinner party guests. And I think I would ask her where she found sort of the courage to be an entrepreneur at that time, to put herself forward and out there. So I think that's hard, right? When you're the only. And she's, like I say, she's written her own story. She's got such a strong voice. And I love her. She's been voted one of the greatest Black Britons. So yeah, so definitely her. Um, Another character, I think potentially it would be interesting to speak to someone in Gervaise's position. So he is the owner of Tall Trees, the House of Shades, and he's coming to the end of his life. He's unwell, but he has this commission that he gives to Hester, and it's related to how he's made his money, which is in slavery and plantations. And I think that he's an interesting character to me because of what he represents. And I think there's a generational difference between
Mm-hmm.
him and Roland, his son, in terms of how they view that past and their connection to it. And I think I'd like to sort of tease out some of that and the level of responsibility he would
Mm-hmm.
feel.
Mm-hmm.
Although it'd be quite a deep conversation for the dinner party. So so yeah, so maybe that would be one of those sort of really earnest ones that was going on in the corner. Um, and then a third conversation. There's a character in the book called Jenny, and she is
I
the
love
sort of
Jenny. I
she's the
just love
kitchen Rose,
Jenny.
and she is an ally to Hester while she's at the house. And I would like to get her perspective. She's quite irreverent about some of the members of the household, especially Margaret, and who you mentioned previously is the housekeeper. And I would like to get her perspective on what she thinks about these sort of wealthy folks that she works for, and how they conduct themselves, and what she's really thinking about them.
Just like Jenny is so sweet. You feel like you know Jenny, right? Or you at least, everyone needs a Jenny in their life. Everyone needs a Jenny, right? Oprah talks about her Gail, but
100%.
everyone
Yeah,
needs a Jenny.
this is true. 100%.
Now, was there a particular muse or source of inspiration that visited you during your writing process that you haven't mentioned before?
I don't think so, really. I had really got into Mary Seacole and what she was doing at the time, as I'd mentioned, and there was a lot at the time when I was writing about different individuals and organisations within the UK coming forward and speaking about reparations and slavery and their responsibility and the role they played. So I think it was that sort of more general mood rather than another individual apart from Mary Seacole, as I say. But it feels like a very sort of topical, like a live conversation at the moment. So yeah, so that was probably my sort of prompt to write about this.
Okay. Now, in the book itself, there is a supernatural element that goes through the plot line. Have you ever had a paranormal experience that influenced the supernatural elements that you listed in House of Shades?
Mm. I don't know how much of an influence it had. I've been to so there's a cemetery in the book because Hester goes to visit her
Your
mum's
mom?
grave. Yeah, and I've been in a cemetery and seen some ghosts when I was a child. So I was there with my mum, and I said something along the lines of, "Oh, can I go and play with those children over there?" And it turned out we were walking through the children's bit of the cemetery. And so the way she tells it, she took my hand and we turned around and walked straight out again.
She's like, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, she's like, not today. But I do think there is something about those ideas when there's something that's really great about Victorian London where it sort of feels a little bit dark, a little
It
bit
does.
gothic, and all of those things to really sort of you feel like curses and hauntings and things like that are more possible.
If there was a soundtrack created for House of Shades has now been opted for a movie. Is there a soundtrack or a song that you would like to play?
God, I mean, it should probably be something sort of like contemporary for the times, have something classic like that we'd consider classical. Um, but yeah, oh, I have to come back to me on that. I love this question. But like, I really like. I'm like, oh, what would it be? Would it be? Yeah, I want to think about that some more.
See, we've got to know what it is.
Yeah.
Nice. Is there something that you're dying to share during this interview that you've never shared anywhere else, albeit with House of Shades or your first book or your writing process? What is that nugget that you're like, you know what? This is the time that I am going to share blah
Oh,
in your face. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you could see the look. It's like someone reading a naughty text and they should not be reading it because they're in church or school or something.
oh no, and I'm gonna be a letdown now. I'm trying to think of something sufficiently juicy to throw into the mix. I gosh, no, I don't really have anything really. What I mean, I could say, okay, so someone said that this was chaotic. I don't when I'm doing my research, I don't take notes.
Oh.
And part of that okay, and part of the reason I do that is because it helps me internalize
Mm,
what has been said, and then it sort of all melds in my mind. And obviously if I need to, I will fact check later, but it helps me to think of these of the research that I sort of do, like looking at newspaper articles or secondary sources, diaries, things like that. And if it's not written down in front of me, then I feel like it's just things that I know, and that helps me get into the period in the way that we just know things now. We don't have notes about them. So that's part of
nice.
how I get into it and immerse myself.
Okay, so that is a great nugget. Where are the listeners able to interact with you? Where are they able to find you online and such?
Yeah, so I have so Harper have a little sort of blurb about my book. I'm never very good at. I'm not salesy at all. But there's a blurb on Harper, Also, my agent has a page about me. She's Juliet Mushins.
Okay.
It's a UK page. So yeah, I should probably angle to there.
Now we are at the end of the show and the part that so many of my guests get terrified over. This is the this or that. I'm just going to read two things, and whichever one sticks out with you is the one that you respond. And I just randomly picked, I don't write these, okay? I just read them. You
Now
get
I'm
what
worried.
you get and you don't throw a fit.
Oh, I like that.
Okay, talking or reading?
Reading.
Drums or guitar?
Drums.
Drums. Art class or math class?
Art class.
Puppies or dolphins?
Puppies always.
Well, that was weird. Let me see. Oh, swim in jello or swim in chocolate milk?
Swim in chocolate milk.
Last one, ride on a kangaroo or an eagle?
I think an eagle would be smoother, right?
I think so. And different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a bit like jolted.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lianne, for joining me. I know that it's getting later there, and I am so excited about your upcoming release, House of Shade. I just hope that this does all of what you envision it to do. And I look forward to hearing so much more from you and having you back on the show talking about your next release.
Well, thank you ever so much for your time this evening. I really appreciate how closely you read it and the amazing questions. And thank you for having me. It's been a
Oh,
blast.
you are welcome. And this wraps up another episode of On the Air with Florenza. You may follow me on all social media platforms under Florenza Lee or via my website at florenza.org. Until next time, cheers.